Hello again everyone. Today, I will give a lecture on the integumentary system. Don't forget to fill in the attendance form. The link is in the UKM folio, under this topic. Without further ado, let's begin. The integument is also known as the skin. As you may have already known, it is the largest system of the human body. It covers up to 2 meters square in area. The integument is made up of two parts. First, the cutaneous membrane, which is the skin, and second, the accessory structures. For the cutaneous membrane, it has two components. First, the outer epidermis, which has the superficial epithelium. Second, the inner dermis, which has the connective tissues. For the accessory structures, they are located inside the dermis and extend through the epidermis. The accessory structures are hair, nails, and exocrine glands. Here is the image of the components of the integumentary system. For the layers, we have epidermis, dermis, and hypodermis. The hair, which is part of the accessory structures, protrude from dermis to the epidermis. Here are some functions of the skin. Skin plays a big role to protect the underlying tissues and organs. By the glands, they excrete salts, water, and organic wastes outside the skin. Skin is also important in maintaining body temperature. Moreover, skin stores lipids, especially in the hypodermis layer, and skin is capable to detect touch, pressure, pain, and temperature. Okay, we start with the first layer of the skin, the epidermis. The epidermis consists of the superficial epithelium, which is avascular, stratified squamous epithelium. Avascular means lack of blood vessels. So, if the epidermis doesn't have blood vessels, how do they get nutrients and oxygen? It is from capillaries in the dermis that diffuse to the epidermis. And, if you look at the image in this slide, you can see that there are epidermal ridges on the bottom surface of the epidermis. The epidermal ridges fit the complementary pattern of projections in the dermis, called dermal papilla. Both the epidermal ridges and dermal papilla will increase the attachment between tissues. Okay, the cells of the epidermis are called keratinocytes. By now, when you hear the word cyte, it means a cell. So, keratinocytes are keratin cell. They are the most abundant cells in the epidermis. The epidermis has thin skin and thick skin. For thin skin, it covers almost the whole body. And thin skin has 4 layers of keratinocytes. Meanwhile, thick skin only covers the palms and soles of the feet. Thick skin has 5 layers of keratinocytes. Here are the images showing you the difference between thin skin and thick skin. For thick skin, it is 1 additional layer of keratinocytes, which is the stratum lucidum. The 5 layers, or 5 strata, of keratinocytes starts from the basal lamina, or stratum germinativum, or basal, stratum spinosum, stratum granulosum, stratum lucidum, and stratum corneum. Here are the labelings of all 5 layers. Again, stratum lucidum is only appeared in the thick skin. First, stratum germinativum, or stratum basal. So, the word germinativum comes from the germinative cells, which are the stem cells. This layer is attached to basal lamina by cell junction, called hemidesmosome. Do you still remember hemidesmosome? Okay, the stratum germinativum is important to form the epidermal ridges. For your information, fingerprints are the pattern of the epidermal ridges on fingers. Here is the high magnification image of fingerprints that come from the epidermal ridges. We are still in the topic of stratum germinativum. The 2 specialized cells in this layer are Merkel cells and melanocyte. For Merkel cells, they respond to touch stimuli. For melanocyte, they contain the melanin pigment. The melanin gives color to human skin, also to hair, and eye color. Next, stratum spinosum. It is also known as the spiny layer. The division of cells in stratum germinativum will produce stratum spinosum. There are about 8 to 10 layers in spinosum. The important cells in this layer are dendritic or Langerhans cells. Langerhans cells can stimulate immune response after sensing any kind of danger in the skin. Next, stratum granulosum, which is the grainy layer. In this layer, the cells have stopped dividing and start producing keratin and keratohyalin. The keratin is a tough, fibrous protein that makes the hair and nails. The keratohyalin are dense granules that bind keratin fibers together. Then, stratum lucidum. This layer is only appeared in the thick skin. It is also known as the clear layer. Alright, the final one is stratum corneum. It is the horn layer. This layer is exposed on the skin surface. It is the thickest stratum, with 15 to 30 layers of keratinized cells. Stratum corneum is water resistant, and it can shed, and is replaced, around 2 to 4 weeks, depends on the individual. Let's talk about the keratinization. It is the formation of keratin, which is a layer of dead and protective cells. Keratinization occurs on all exposed skin surfaces, except the eyes. This process is like a skin life cycle. And it takes about 15 to 30 days for a skin cell to move from the stratum germinativum to stratum corneum. Therefore, the take-home message is that you should not scrub your face every day, because it will not give time for your skin to regenerate, and it will also damage the skin. Okay, we have covered the epidermis. Now, move to the dermis. The dermis is located between the epidermis and the hypodermis, or subcutaneous layer. There are two components in the dermis: first, outer papillary layer, second, deep reticular layer. For the papillary layer, it consists of areolar tissue. Refresh back your memory on connective tissues. In papillary layer, which is the upper part of the dermis, everything is smaller, such as capillaries, lymphatics, and sensory neurons. Papillary layer has dermal papillae projecting between epidermal ridges. For the reticular layer, it consists of dense irregular connective tissue. And everything is larger in the reticular layer, such as the blood vessels, lymph vessels, and nerve fibers, as reticular layer is in the deep part of the dermis. Also, the reticular layer contains collagen and elastic fibers. For blood supply, in the dermis, it has papillary plexus at the dermal papilla and cutaneous plexus at the dermal hypodermal junction. Okay, the third layer of the skin is the hypodermis. It is a loose connective tissue type in this layer. This is because the hypodermis is made of areolar and adipose tissues. The hypodermis is connected to the deep reticular layer of the dermis by connective tissue fibers. And this layer has few blood capillaries, and hypodermis is the site for subcutaneous injections. Okay, now, we move to the accessory structures, such as hair, sebaceous glands, sweat glands, and nails. They are located in the dermis. First, hair. Human body is covered with hair, except in palms, soles, lips, and some portions of external genitalia. Hair is important to protect from heat or cold. It guards openings against particles and insects. Example, the hair in your nose. And hair is also sensitive to light touch. This is an image of the hair follicle. The hair follicle is wrapped with a connective tissue sheath and is located in the dermis. The base of hair follicle has a root hair plexus, which is a sensory nerve. Two important accessory structures of the hair are erector pili and sebaceous gland. The erector pili is an involuntary smooth muscle. Contraction of the erector pili muscle can cause the hairs to stand up straight, which produce goosebumps. For the sebaceous glands, it is important to produce secretion to lubricate the hair. It's like the natural hair oil. Two regions of the hair. First, the hair root, which is the lower part of the hair and attached to the dermis. Second, the hair shaft. It is the upper part of the hair, and the hair shaft is not attached to the integument. It is freely exposed on the skin surface. For hair structure, we have medulla, the central core of the hair; cortex, which is the middle layer of the hair; and cuticle, the outer layer. And here, again, another angle of image, showing the layers in hair follicle. Next accessory structure is the gland. The two exocrine glands in the skin are sebaceous glands and sweat glands. For sebaceous glands, they are holocrine glands, and they secrete sebum, oily substance. Do you still remember the modes of secretions for exocrine glands? You may check back from our previous lecture in basic tissues topic. For sweat glands, they have two types, apocrine and merocrine glands. Sweat glands secrete watery secretions. Let's look into the types of sebaceous glands. First, sebaceous glands that are associated with hair follicles. It is a simple branched, alveolar glands. Second, sebaceous follicles, which secrete directly onto the skin surface without attached to the hair follicle. The sebum, produced by sebaceous glands, contain mainly lipids. The sebum lubricates and protects the epidermis. Also, the sebum may inhibit bacterial growth on the epidermis. Here are images of sebaceous follicles and sebaceous glands, which associated with hair follicle. Okay, after the sebaceous glands, let's look into the sweat glands. There are apocrine and merocrine sweat glands. For apocrine sweat glands, they are located in armpits, around nipples, and groin area. They produce secretions into hair follicles. The secretions are sticky and cloudy. They are also responsible for body odors from bacteria breakdown. Here is the image of apocrine sweat gland. As I mentioned earlier, it produces secretions into hair follicles. Next, merocrine sweat glands. Compared to apocrine, merocrine sweat glands can be found throughout the body. They are most abundant on palms and soles. Merocrine sweat glands secrete directly onto the skin surface. Here is the image of merocrine sweat gland, which discharge directly onto the skin surface. Okay, you have learned the hair and glands. Here comes another accessory structure of the integument, which is the nail. The nails are packed with keratin, and they are important to protect fingers and toes. So, for nail production, it occurs in a nail root. For structure of the nail. First, the nail body. It is the visible portion of the nail, and it covers the nail bed, which is under the nail body. Next structure is lunula. It is the pale crescent structure at the base of the nail. Next, sides of nails, which are surrounded by lateral nail folds. Next structure, the hyponychium. It is located under the distal, free edge of the nail. Another structure is the eponychium. It is located at the tip of the proximal nail fold. Here is the image of nails and their structures. Here is another image of the nail. You may find the hyponychium and eponychium. Okay, that's all for the anatomy of integumentary system. Before we end, can you answer this question? That's all from me. See you again in next lecture. Don't forget to fill in the attendance form. Thank you, and take care everyone.